There are all manner of supernatural phenomena. Here are just a few: intuition, ghosts, deja vu, near death experiences, psychic powers and ESP, remote viewing, the second sight, astral projection, manifestation, possession, the list goes on. In this lecture, I'll explain one possible hypothesis which might explain the nature of the supernatural and why the embedding of such things is so subtle. The scope of what is considered supernatural has throughout time been fluid. To the ancient Egyptians, many things we would consider supernatural formed daily life, and to a peasant in medieval times, electricity, flight, or radio communications would have been considered supernatural. What I'm trying to express is there are many subjects which, throughout time, have jumped from the realms of supernatural over into science and then back again. It is my belief that there are certain things that it would be detrimental for all mankind to know. What those things are might be considered a mystery, but I'm not so ignorant to dismiss all such things simply because they were not taught to me in school. For many modern humans, belief is based now on scientific proof, something that is difficult to render when the aforementioned person is a non-believer. One has to first have faith and then observe, and if practiced in that order, the supernatural can more easily be understood through a scientific observation. Okay, so for the benefit of the skeptical, let's consider a supernatural experiment, a manifestation experiment. Think of a person you've not seen for many years and are unlikely to see anytime soon. Bring them to the front of your mind and talk about them to others. Tell stories about them. Think about them many times daily. Write a song about them and sing it. I guarantee, without exception, that they will present themselves to you in one form or another, however unlikely that may be. It could be them being at a table randomly next to you in a restaurant, a phone call or a message out of the blue, or they might just simply drive past you in a car. For the recently deceased, it may be an extremely vivid dream. Manifestation can also be manipulated by saying out loud, "I'm a magnet for wealth and money comes easily to me in abundance." Believe it, keep doing it, and sit back and wait for the results. Other supernatural abilities appear to us all on a daily basis. You just need to be looking. Deja vu and intuition are common and often dismissed again as mere coincidences, but I ask that you keep a diary and consider the law of averages for an insight into events being more about majestic synchronicity than the ignorant insult of mere coincidence. Another supernatural ability that can be experimented with by anybody is that of astral projection. One must again come from a starting point of belief and then follow one of the many techniques published on the internet about the subject or from a book. Try several different techniques and I guarantee one of them will certainly work for you. Lucid dreaming is another experiment that anybody can freely try, a technique that for Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla and many other geniuses throughout the remotest avenues of time have produced some truly groundbreaking results. So why are these things considered supernatural? I really think that given the overwhelming body of truth and evidence that they should simply be known as natural phenomena. There is however one constant with the supernatural, and that is that it's not easily achieved and requires belief and significant effort to tap into. You have to work to make it work. Why is the supernatural just out of reach to us in day-to-day life? Why do we have to make a substantial effort to tap into it? As humans, we have evolved with eyes in the front of our head. We've evolved that way to see food, kill it and eat it, as opposed to the donkey that's got eyes in the side of its head to make sure the silly humans aren't coming from behind to try and eat it. But there are many more aspects of what we are, which, if not for a very careful evolutionary balance, would make life day to day for us incomprehensible. When you think to yourself, I fancy a cup of tea, that is your inner voice quietly suggesting a course of action. It's subtle intentionally because if that voice boomed out, "Shall we have a cup of tea?" in a pronounced voice, you would at best be afraid, shocked, or possibly argue with it and become a schizophrenic. The volume of the inner voice for most of us has evolved to be turned all the way down, to gently steer our course of action at a lower volume than you. Another example that's very similar is that of memories. When we recall the past, it's vague and distant, almost difficult to reach, as if the volume of memory is intentionally ever so quiet. Because if we remembered everything perfectly, instantly, if we remembered every single thing that we did, and it was right there all the time, how could we differentiate what was memory from the experience of the present? When memories are too loud or too vivid or recalled too easily, then all manner of psychological problems occur. So again, it's an evolutionary balance, one that's intentional, so memories do not unduly interfere with our experience of the present. Human beings have 5 primary senses. They are sight, smell, sound, taste and touch. And we have the hardware to experience those senses. So we have eyes for sight, ears for sound, and so on and so forth. There are also other senses such as vestibular, which is movement, and that's our balance sense, and there's proprioception, which is body position, and that's the awareness sense, so we know where our arms and legs are at any one time, and it also prevents us from crushing an egg in our hands when we gently pick it up. Let's imagine a situation for a moment where a creature's primary food source made such a terrible, unbearable noise that the creature had evolved to have its hearing turned all the way down, or indeed been switched off completely, so not to interfere with its success in hunting. Try explaining sound to a creature that's been made deaf. What if I told you that we as humans have many other senses and the hardware to tap into them? But evolution has turned the volume of those senses all the way down to almost nothing, so not to interfere with our ability to sustain these mortal bodies that we have, so not to interfere with our ability to see food, kill it and eat it. The world as we know it has 3 dimensions of space, that is to say length, width and depth, and 1 dimension of time. The first 2 dimensions are easy to understand because we're free to move left and right and forward and back. This is the world of flatland where creatures drawn with a pencil reside. The third dimension, or the up and down, again we can move relatively freely in this dimension, but creatures drawn with a pencil on a piece of paper would have no understanding of up and down because they live in a flat 2-dimensional world. The 4th dimension, or time, is the hardest to get your head around as it's less to do with clocks and should be considered as another dimension. Again, the creatures drawn on a piece of paper in 2 dimensions will have no comprehension of the 4th dimension, time, either, because they're merely drawn on a piece of paper and essentially frozen in time. It's hard to understand time as a dimension because we can freely move in 3 dimensions, but we are not free to travel in the 4th dimension. In the 4th dimension, or time, we can and are moving. We're moving forward at a rate of 1 second per second relative to ourselves. But we can't physically change that, at least not while we're in our bodies. We are all indeed time travellers, but not as free to move in the 4th dimension as we are in the first 3. So these first 4 dimensions, 3 of space and 1 of time, form something that we call space-time. And that's the reality that we humans perceive day to day. That's all we see, all we know. But, and it's a big but, these first 4 dimensions are not the whole picture. We do not see the world as it really is. According to string theory, one of the leading physics models, the universe operates in 10 dimensions. So where are the other 6 dimensions? Why can't we see them? The higher dimensions that we cannot perceive are known by the fantastical name hyperspace. But don't let that name put you off. But do believe me when I tell you, these higher dimensions do indeed exist all around you. You just can't sense them. They may be unseen to us, but real all the same. And I've always thought that these higher dimensions would be a great place for higher beings to live, safely away from the dangerous human apes in the 4-dimensional cage. It's possible that our very essence, the immortal spark inside all of us, physically resides in a higher timeless dimension or dimensions, and is merely driving our bodies like some kind of 4-dimensional avatar. Hey look, I don't pretend for a moment to understand the exact mechanics of hyperspace, and any attempt to do so would be like a termite trying to explain rocket science to a tree. It's just far too beyond the mind of an ape, beyond the mind of all of us, until we fall asleep. Just like our eyes do not see when we are asleep, our hyperspace abilities don't easily manifest while we're awake. But we all have the hardware, and just like the voice in the head and our memories, the volume of our supernatural abilities is intentionally turned all the way down so not to interfere with our daily waking survival and sustenance activities. But when we're asleep, there's no need for this restriction, and our abilities are naturally lifted, switched back on, if you will. When we fall from the waking state into different states of consciousness, such as sleep and dreaming and meditation, the volume lock on our supernatural abilities can be lifted. This does not mean we'll all start using our supernatural abilities. You know, it's the old phrase, you can take a horse to water. I mean, simply removing the speed limiter on a vehicle doesn't mean that Miss Daisy's driver is suddenly going to shoot off at high speed. Most of the human race seem quite content in staying in the safe confines of space-time, almost in a trans-dimensional agoraphobic state of contentment. There are others, however, at the other end of the spectrum, the super users, if you will, who have an uncontrollable urge to manifest supernatural activities, perhaps those with a natural higher volume to the supernatural. And it's probably best for mankind that only a few dive so deep. You know, we've probably evolved as a herd that way. And somewhere in between the agoraphobic and the super user, your good self and I, listening to that quiet little voice in our heads. I have no doubt in my mind that for all of us, certain places, frequencies, smells, taste and actions help activate one's supernatural abilities. Triggering one's primary senses may serve to kickstart higher abilities in some form or manner. One thing seems certain. We all have in us the hardware to interact with higher dimensions, to interact with the supernatural. We're all very likely time-travelling superhumans with an immortal essence saved to the cloud. And you can choose to believe that or choose not to believe that, but you should believe in something all the same. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video today, and as a gift for your labours, I give to you the manifestation of that old friend that's going to come back into your life. Please do like and subscribe to the channel. I'm Steve, and this has been Bright Weird.